Who is a huge fan of this Christmas movie? Come on, let me see your raise of hands. All right, A Christmas Story. It is the most watched Christmas movie of all time. I don't know if you knew that, but when it comes this time of the year, this is the number one on the top of the list that everybody is watching. And that one scene in particular is actually the most watched scene of the entire movie. And so if you go onto YouTube or different video sites, you'll see that that one scene is the most enjoy that people like to look up and watch and laugh about. I mean, what a hilarious moment. I just kind of, I love how the elves are talking like, come on, kid, like, come on, hurry up. You know, the line's long, hurry up. I love just how she talks. I think it's hilarious. Uh, but maybe it reminds you of your mom a little bit. But anyway, good morning. As we're here again in our amazing Christmas series, of Christmas and Flannel. I love getting to see how we're having a great time with it, wearing all of our favorite flannel and Christmas outfits. We really wanted this season to be a comfortable and more relaxing one for us as a brand new church family. So that's kind of the whole purpose behind it. But it's been a great series, a great journey so far. We've talked about lots of different things. And as we're kind of on the topic of Christmas movies, another few favorites that people really love to enjoy would be Elf. Who here loves the Elf movie? Yes, that's my favorite Christmas movie. We also have The Miracle on 34th Street. Anybody? Yes, personal favorite. Okay, I love it. What about The Polar Express? Okay, yes, I'll say the 3D version of that movie is amazing. I absolutely love it. I love going to the theater as a kid watching that. And then also another popular one is the Santa Claus movies with Tim Allen. Is that a favorite at all to anybody? That also registered really high on just the most watched Christmas movies. And we love watching those movies because really it's only this time of the year that we can really indulge in those types of movies because it'd be kind of weird if we were watching, The Miracle on 34th Street in July. Be a little odd. And so it's really just this one time of the year that we get to, sit on our couches and watch some of these amazing films that people put so much energy into creating and so much just time and thought and just work into, creating such a beautiful thing for us all to enjoy. And we love these movies. We love the messages behind them. We love how there are these magical moments, it feels like, especially in the movie A Miracle on 34th Street, and maybe even The Polar Express too, these magical moments where we're just kind of in awe and inspired, right? We love just the comedy. There are a lot of hilarious moments that happen in the Elf movie, which is why it's my favorite. It is my favorite all-time Christmas movie. But we love watching these movies, and we love enjoying them. I think one of the biggest reasons why we really enjoy them the most is that they portray such an image of Christmas that is so true to what we really feel and we experience this time of the year. Like, just for example, that one 3-minute clip from A Christmas Story. I mean, we have Santa, we have presents, we have the decorations. Do you see all the intricate decorations throughout that shopping center right there? Just in that 2.5 second, 2.5 minute clip, did you see all the fake snow and the lights and all the just the beautiful decorations that they went into putting into that scene, and also the trees and like I said, the presents and the songs that we sing when we go Christmas caroling or things like that. Having grown up in Michigan, my idea of Christmas caroling is walking around in the snow and getting to see these songs. Maybe here in South Carolina it's a little bit different, walking around in the mud and singing these songs, but Christmas caroling and just that Christmassy spirit of happiness or joy or peace or hope. I mean, we love watching these movies because all of those things kind of just bubble up to the surface, and we can resonate with a lot of those things. And we laugh a lot too when we watch those movies, but if you were to scrape off the surface kind of the parties, the celebrations that happen in the movies, and the presents that are exchanged, and the pleasures that people get to enjoy, maybe vacations or getaways or different celebrations or traditions that they do, all come to the surface of the mainline elements of what Christmas is. And that's kind of the overall across the top, the message that's communicated with a lot of these great Christmas movies that we love. And I love them. I'm not saying that we should, toss them. I love Christmas music, Christmas movies, and Christmas music too. But the thing that I kind of wanted us to wrestle together this morning is that maybe a lot of these movies and things that we love watching are not painting the whole picture of Christmas. I mean, a huge part of even what they showed right there in that video clip of A Christmas Story is how busy this season is, right? And is life busy right now? Or maybe it's just me, maybe it's just for us, but life is busy, right? That's a huge part of what they shared in that clip. Like, come on, kid, hurry up, kid. There's a long line, the store's about to close. Life is busy. And we can connect with all those things, and they kind of paint this picture of what Christmas really is. And they're not wrong in a lot of ways, but there's not the whole thing. It's not the whole picture of what Christmas is really meant for us to experience this time of the year, and what God is dreaming for us to get to walk through as we celebrate this amazing holiday. Because if we just kind of settle for those things, if we settle for the parties, if we settle for the presents, the presents. Anybody excited for their presents this year? I mean, who's been good? Yes, we're getting some great presents this year. Yes, absolutely. Everybody loves the presents. And everybody loves the pleasures. Maybe it's a getaway time that you take a vacation when the kids are out of school, or you spend an extra amount of family time together. But if we just settle for those couple of things, don't get me wrong, we'll have a great Christmas just like we have in the years in the past. But I really believe that we're going to fall short of what God is really dreaming for us to experience this year, because it's not the whole picture. And maybe what you're even experiencing right now is you're kind of pursuing those things, those parties, those Christmas parties with work and with the family, and the gatherings and the dinners and the presents and the pleasures. Those things is that you're starting to feel overwhelmed. You're starting to feel stressed, physically, emotionally, financially stressed. I mean, maybe it's just us, but I don't think we're alone in that way. I mean, this time of the year, although we get excited about the joy and the Christmas spirit and the decorations, and we love looking at all the lights and the trees, but yet we feel pretty exhausted. We feel overwhelmed. I mean, what if Christmas didn't have to be that way? What if it didn't have to feel that way? What if, as we're going through this season and we're celebrating and we're going to do all these things, what if it all wasn't of waking up on December 26th feeling just drained? You see, there's a couple in the Bible who aren't really talked about much in the Christmas story, but they come up a lot. Actually, if you read through the parts of the Bible that talk about the Christmas story, Matthew chapter 1 and Luke chapter 1 and 2, if you look at these chapters and you read the beautiful Christmas story, which I really encourage you to do this Christmas with your family, and sit down and read the beautiful Christmas story. But if you read through this story, you'll read a lot about Mary and Joseph, which a lot of plays and sermons and things we talk about during this time of the year. But there's this another couple that's talked about, and it's Zechariah and Elizabeth. And through this series, we've been talking about the relationships that people in the Christmas story and how they deal with each other and things that happen. We talked about 2 weeks ago altogether how Joseph showed mercy to Mary when he thought that she had cheated on him, and he found out that she was pregnant. He didn't think that it was because of God. He thought that she had cheated on him, so he was going to separate from her. He wasn't going to get married to her. He was going to divorce her quietly, and he chose to show her mercy. And we talked about last week how when Mary was told by God that she was going to become pregnant, she was afraid, she was terrified, and she ran to her relative Elizabeth, one of the ladies who we're going to talk about today. How she ran to Elizabeth for help, and Elizabeth encouraged her. Oh, such a great message last week as we kind of sat around in the living room together and we talked and discovered that together, how God is dreaming for us to be encouragers this time of the year. How we feel pretty drained and we feel very kind of let down. And God is inviting us to be encouragers, to be people who lift up others, not just with presence, but with our words and our actions. And it's such a great week last week, and I'm excited for today as we talk about more about Elizabeth and her husband, Zechariah, because they're a huge part of the Christmas story. You see Elizabeth and Zechariah in Luke chapter 1. The Bible tells us that they're a righteous couple. That God says that they're great in my eyes. That this couple, they're just how everyone should strive to be like. They're great. They're righteous people in their hearts. Their hearts are pure. And we read that they're older. right? They're just a little bit more experienced in life. They're not old, but they're just more experienced in life, and they don't have any kids. And they really wanted kids, but they never had that privilege of having kids. And that was a huge thing that especially Elizabeth struggled with in her heart. She wanted kids so badly. And Zechariah, he was a priest, and one day when he was at the temple doing his priestly duties, in Luke chapter 1 towards the beginning part, I'm kind of setting up the scene before we dive in, we read together, but as Zechariah is at the temple, he's doing his priestly duties, he gets this extremely rare opportunity to get to go into the temple and perform these ritual sacrifices, these things inside the temple that very few people ever get to do in their life. And so he gets chosen at complete random to get to go in and do these ritualistic, these things that he's performing, and it's purely by chance. Like there's very few people who ever get that privilege to get to go and do that thing, and he gets to go into the temple and he's doing that thing, this once in a lifetime opportunity. It's like if we were get to meet the president or get to have dinner with a celebrity like Steve Harvey. He's like one of my favorite celebrities. If we were to have those once in a lifetime opportunities, just like that, is here in this moment, Zechariah goes into the temple. He's beginning the ritual and the sacred ritual, and all of a sudden God comes out and God sends an angel to talk to Zechariah. And God tells him that him and his wife are going to get pregnant. They're going to have a baby boy. And they name their son John. And it's so important that they name him John. And he goes on to talk about how John is actually going to become later on the John the Baptist. As we read through the Gospels, we read about John the Baptist, right? This is John as a baby. That they're going to have John. And he's going to be the forerunner to Jesus. And he's such a crucial part of Jesus' life because he's the one who's going to go out to Israel and he's going to preach this message of repentance. And he's going to begin preparing people's hearts to turn back to God. And so John was such an important part of the Christmas story, and Zechariah and Elizabeth were such a huge part of the Christmas story. And Zechariah, when he hears all these things that him and his wife are going to get pregnant, he says something kind of stupid, and he puts his foot in his mouth. Has anyone ever done that? Kind of put your foot in the mouth, maybe. Oh, hey, honey, yeah, that dress. Oh no, you don't look any more fat than normal. Look, you ever say something stupid like that? I mean, in this moment, Zechariah puts his foot right in his mouth. And he says, God, what are you talking about? You talking to me? Like, I'm the only one in here. You sure you're talking to me? Because me and my wife were old. We're not getting pregnant. We're not having kids. We're way past that part of our life. God, are you sure? You're not talking to me. And he says that, and God says, listen, have you forgotten who I am? Have you forgotten I'm the one who created the world, who created the universe? And actually, because of Zechariah's response, he actually removes his ability to speak. And so for the whole time of Elizabeth's pregnancy, he doesn't have the chance to speak, which I'm sure at times she really loved that he didn't say anything more stupid to her. But he didn't have the ability to talk. And God said, listen, when John is born and you give him the name John, then you'll be able to speak again. And so then we kind of fast forward. And later in Luke chapter 1, after we read about Mary finding out that she's going to be pregnant and she runs to Elizabeth, then we read about Elizabeth giving birth to John. And that's the part we're going to sit down, we're going to read together. So I really encourage you, if you have a Bible with you, kind of hold it in your hands. We have some on the seats too. But we're in Luke chapter 1. It's also going to be on the screen, but it's so rich to have it right here in front of you, right? Right? Amen, church? Come on, it's so rich to have it right here in our hands. So this is the Word of God. But we're going to start in verse 57, and we're going to read to 66, and I want us to just soak up every word that's spoken to us here. Let's read it together. When it was time for Elizabeth to have her baby, she gave birth to a son. Her neighbors and relatives heard that the Lord had shown her great mercy, and they shared her joy. On the 8th day, they came to circumcise the child, and they were going to name him after his father, Zechariah. But his mother spoke up and said, "No, he is to be called John." They said to her, "There is no one among your relatives who has that name." Then they made signs to his father to find out what he would like to name the child. They're kind of motioning to him like, what do you want to name him? What do you want to name your son, your baby boy? Verse 63. He asked for a writing tablet, and to everyone's astonishment, he wrote, "His name is John." Immediately his mouth was open, his tongue set free, and he began to speak, praising God. All the neighbors were filled with awe, and throughout the hill country of Judea, people were talking about all of these things. Everyone who heard this wondered about it, asking, "What then is this child going to be?" For the Lord's hand was with him. Wow, friends, what an amazing story right there. And I don't want us to miss the weight of what's happening. Because in the first half of the story, when Zechariah is first told about him and Elizabeth getting pregnant, and he has that moment where he kind of puts his foot in his mouth, you say, I believe that he's so caught up in the moment of getting to experience that once-in-a-lifetime opportunity, that once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to begin to perform that sacred ritual inside the temple that very few people in their life ever get to do. He's so caught up in the moment of being focused on what's right in front of him, and he's so overwhelmed with joy about getting to do this one thing that he had dreamed as a kid getting to do as he was being prepared to be a priest. He had looked forward to this moment, and here he is getting to do, this sacred ritual. And then God shows up and begins to talk to him. And I believe from Zechariah's perspective, God is interrupting what he's doing, what Zechariah is doing. God is putting his nose into a moment that God needs to kind of stay out of. And that God is disturbing Zechariah as he is performing this once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. And friends, I believe as we're in this season of Christmas, we'll have our plans. We have our calendars kind of set. We have the dinner set out. We have the Christmas, the work dinner. We have the home, the family. We have it with them, with your side of the family, with your spouse's side, with the step, the other side. I mean, we have our calendars filled with things that are happening this season. And the problem is that as we're going through it, we're focusing a lot on the parties, the presents, and the pleasures. And those aren't necessarily terrible things, but we're focusing so much on those things that anything that has to do with God, it's like a disturbance to us. That even as people who are part of a church, even as people who've given our lives to God, it feels like this time of the year is for us and what we have going on. And how dare God be a part of it, or how, not necessarily be a part of it, but how he break up our plans. And so, especially this time of the year, we set a lot of church things and a lot of God-related things on the back burner because we're so focused on our calendar and the plans we've made. And so, friends, this morning, as we're in this journey of refocusing our real priorities of what God is intending for us to walk through in this season, I believe one of the very first things that we have to begin to embody is that this season's not for us. Then that moment, Zechariah, as he's performing that ritual, and it's all about him and what he was finally able to do, he was interrupted by God. You see, in this moment, as we're celebrating Christmas, God's involvement is not an interruption, but it is the very reason of why we celebrate Christmas in the first place. And that the presents and the parties and the pleasures, the very things that we've pulled into the centerpiece of this holiday, this season, they're great things, they're beautiful things, don't get me wrong. But they've taken a seat that wasn't theirs. And they need to be pushed back to the perimeter, to the edge of where they belong, still being great things that we do this season, but we've refocused from those things being the centerpiece to them being the edge, and then us getting to refocus on God and Christmas. And maybe this is kind of a message that you hear pretty often. Maybe you hear, oh yeah, I get that, Christmas is all about Jesus, it's all about it's all about God. It's all about church. That's the thing that maybe you've grown up hearing, or that you've told your kids, or you hear other people around you say. But I challenge you to think that if you took away the decorations, would it still feel like Christmas? If you took away the presents, would it still feel like Christmas? If you looked down the tree and the big dinners, would it still feel like Christmas? My friends, that's a real thing that's kind of taken a seat in our heart that it doesn't belong there. And that's why we feel so overwhelmed and stressed out, and why anxiety is taking over our bodies, and why this season is so hard to enjoy. Because these things that are good, don't get me wrong, they're great, beautiful things. But they've taken a place in our hearts that wasn't theirs. So friends, as we're on this journey of moving towards what God is calling us to live in this Christmas season, and as we're on this refocusing journey, as we're on this path of really kind of getting back to the core of what God is inviting us to celebrate this time of the year, I believe that there are a few shifts that God is wanting us to make. Some changes that really need to happen. You see, this first part is kind of decreasing. It's being less focused on how we perform in our performance and being more focused on the praise that we give God during Christmas. You see, I love in this moment when Zechariah names his son. What a beautiful moment. I remember when Aaron and I named him Mason. When Mason was born, he was just this little guy right here in our hands, and we were like, his name's Mason. I mean, we had planned what we were going to name him for months. I mean, there was a huge ordeal of us trying to figure out our son's name. But I remember that moment of like holding him in our hands and Mason Andre Winters. And in this moment, Zechariah is going to look at his son, and he says, John. He doesn't really get to say it out loud, but he writes on a tablet that his name is John. And I love how as he names his son John, and the people around him recognize that he's given back his ability to speak, and the very first thing he does is praise God. See, before he was so caught up in his performance of doing these rituals, these once-in-a-lifetime opportunities, him trying to make those moments special, that he missed out on a great opportunity to meet with the God of the world. And he put his foot in his mouth, and then he lost his ability to speak. And then here he is again, getting to see God work as he names his son John, the very name that God told him to give his son. And he's given back his ability to speak. And he praises God immediately. You see, friends, I think a lot of this season we feel overwhelmed because we feel this pressure to perform. Maybe not entertain and do like a tap dance, kind of performance. Unless you're great at tap dancing, then you go ahead and you do it. But for me, I can't. But we feel this overwhelming pressure to perform, to throw the best Christmas party, to make the best food, and especially to get the best presents for our kids or our grandkids. We feel this pressure to perform. We feel this pressure to make this holiday special. We feel it's on us to make it special when, friends, in all reality, God has already done that. God has already made it special. We could have a 10-foot tree. Aaron and I, in our house, we have a short little kind of like 6.5-foot tree. It's nothing huge, but I tell you what, if we did have a house that had these great big vaulted ceilings, then we'd have this massive, just enormous 10, 11, 12-foot tree. I have no idea how we would decorate it, but that's what we would do. I'll tell you right now. But we feel this pressure to perform and to get crazy with decorations and to make it special. But God has already made it special. So even if we had the big, crazy, ginormous tree in our living room, the bigger tree or the smaller tree, the bigger presents or the smaller presents, the big, fancier dinner or the smaller, simpler dinner, none of that really matters on how special this season is. What really makes it special is God himself. You see, I heard once from somebody that it's kind of funny. It's kind of ironic. It's even a little bit sad how in November we have this really great holiday that we all look forward to, Thanksgiving, where it's this beautiful day where we kind of gather with our families and our friends and we celebrate Thanksgiving. We talk about what we're thankful for, right? Maybe you did this just a couple weeks ago. You sat around a turkey or a ham. We're a ham kind of family. We sat around and you shared about what you're thankful for. Maybe you're eating some pie and talking about just what you're grateful for, what God is doing in your life. We celebrate that's kind of tradition that we do. And then it's ironic and kind of sad that the very next day, as we kick off Christmas, or to me, really the start of Christmas. I know some people, it's November 1st is the start of Christmas. But the day after Thanksgiving kind of kicks off Christmas, and it starts with Black Friday. And we go from a day when we're saying we're thankful for things, and we go to a day where we're trying to chase down deals on TVs and crockpots. I remember being a kid watching on the news how people would rush through Walmart and these crazy kind of things would happen. And I never grew up as a kid going, we were never big into Black Friday. But it's kind of sad how we treat Thanksgiving as a time when we are thankful. We praise God for what he's doing. But yet Christmas we don't. When really this season is about us giving God praise and thanking him for the greatest gift that the world has ever been given. Amen, church? So friends, I encourage you, as you celebrate Christmas this year with your family, with your your coworkers, with your immediate family, maybe on on Christmas Day, or with your extended family for a dinner or something, give God praise. Stop being pressured to perform and make it special because God has already done so. Find a moment to give God praise and talk about how grateful you are that God has given us Jesus. How God himself kind of stepped off the throne of heaven and lived the life of a man. He was born a baby, lived the life of a human being, and then gave his very life on the cross so that we may be forgiven of our sin and be in a renewing relationship with him. Friends, that's the greatest gift in the entire world. And yet we kind of push that to the background and we celebrate some other things that are happening in front of us. Friends, let's reclaim that part of Christmas and be more about praising God this time of the year. I also encourage us as we're making these shifts with Christmas that we especially begin to focus less on the noise from the peanut gallery and begin to focus more on the purposes that God has for right now. You see, friends, in this moment as the families all coming together for Elizabeth and Zechariah, and their son is born, everybody is being able to have some input about what they should name their son. And even when Elizabeth kind of speaks up and says his name is John, and they say, no one in your family has that name. Why would you name your son John, right? Name him Zechariah. Name him after his dad, or name him after his grandpa or whatever. They start giving these options. And they look to Zechariah about what they should name their son, and he confirms it to be John. But in this moment, there's so much commotion happening around John's birth. But yet they don't let that begin to pull away from what God wanted them to do. They don't get caught up in the peanut gallery. They don't get caught up in the opinions and the pieces of advice from other people. They stand firm when they know what God has called them to. And so, friends, my encouragement to you this season is not to be so focused on what other people think about you, not to be so focused in making sure that you're the perfect parent of what our culture says the perfect parent, to get the biggest, coolest gifts, and to go bankrupt trying to do so, and maxing out the credit card to do so. Don't try to have the coolest party for people to enjoy, because that's what you're said to, that's what is expected of you. That's what you're told to do. Have you ever had a moment where you chose to do something different than what someone expected you to do? And do you remember the judgment you felt from them, or the look on their face of how they're kind of staring at you? See, another one of my favorite Christmas movies is Christmas with the Cranks. Have you seen it? Anyone seen the movie Christmas with the Cranks? Yes? Thank you for not leaving me all by myself. I appreciate that, you guys. But yes, it's a hilarious movie. I encourage you to watch it. It's about this middle-aged couple whose kids have left the house. They've left the nest, and they've gone on. They're getting married. They're in college, and they're far away from home. And this is the very first Christmas that mom and dad have by themselves. And so instead of doing all the extravagant Christmas stuff of getting the presents and the decorations and the trees and all the front yard decorations and all the crazy stuff with the Christmas cards, they decide to skip Christmas. That's their idea in that movie. Mr. and Mrs. Crank, they decide to skip Christmas, and then all of a sudden their whole community and their whole neighborhood looks at them like they're crazy people, saying, "What are you doing skipping Christmas?" Because they decide to go on a cruise instead. Friends, I think there are a lot of expectations we feel of us that are on us, of how we should be parents during this season, how we should be siblings, how we should be kids of our own. There are a lot of expectations that are kind of placed on us and how we should be. But I really encourage you, lean more into what God is calling you to do than fulfilling those expectations. Don't get me wrong, I'm not saying check out of Christmas. I'm not saying don't go to the family dinners. I'm saying go to the family dinners, but don't get dragged into the family drama. Go to the work dinners, but don't get part of the work drama. Don't jump on those trains of what other people are expecting you to do. Still love, be a part, be involved. But don't get dragged into the things that you know God doesn't want you to be a part of. My friends, I encourage you, be less focused on listening to the voices of the peanut gallery and be more concerned and more interested in God's purposes during this season. And friends, I think this last shift that's important for us to make is for us to be less about pointing people to us and more about pointing people to God. You see, I love how towards the end of that, of what we read, it's a beautiful thing. They named their son John, and then everyone around them is just kind of ecstatic, like, oh my word, they named their son John? And they ask, what then is this child going to be? And they looked at him, and they knew that the Lord's hand was with him. You see, what's beautiful about John's name and why God wanted their son to be named John, why he was so specific, name your son John, is because that name means that the Lord is merciful. That God is merciful. It's a huge display of what God is about to do through John in his life, how he will become John the Baptist and do incredible things, and how God will use him. But friends, I encourage you in this season, with the gifts that we give, try not to earn people's admiration. Try not to earn their appreciation of you. And maybe you don't necessarily do this, but maybe you do and you just don't quite see it. But some of us even have a habit of this time of the year lifting ourselves above other people. And maybe it's easy for us to pick out someone in our family who does that. Or maybe it's easy for us to point out somebody who we work with who does that. But I encourage you, friends, in this season, don't be trying to get people to admire, to look at you, and to be jealous of you and what you're able to give your kids and what kind of job that you have as you meet with that family you only see once a year. Don't try to brag about what's happening in your life. It will be more about pointing people to God. Be pointing people's eyes to the one who offers a salvation that is unlike anything that we can find here on earth. The one who gives us a love that is unlike anything that we can discover or feel here on earth. Friends, be pointing people's eyes to God this season. And even as Zechariah chose to name his son John, he had the opportunity to name his son Zechariah. It would have given him honor and respect naming his son that. But he chose to be more obedient to what God was calling him to do. So my friends, I encourage you in everything that you do this season, be pointing people's eyes to God. Be less focused about the parties and the presents and the pleasures, and be more about praising God. Be more interested in praising God. And everything that you do, be more interested in praising God. And friends, be more interested in pointing others to him. Be more interested in letting people see how great he is and what he is doing in your life. And be more interested in the purposes that God has in store during this season. See, another one of a great clip from that movie, and maybe when you think of the movie A Christmas Story, you think of this scene right here, where all the boys are at recess at school. Anybody, you recognize this scene of the movie? Yeah? Or the boys are at recess and they're kind of being boys out in the playground and they're all gathered up around the flagpole, right? You can kind of picture this, play this in your mind. You know, they're out there at the flagpole and the boy looks at another kid and says, listen, I dare you Right? I dare you to stick your tongue on the flagpole. Right? The kid's like, no, I'm not going to do that. I mean, he knows that if he does it, his tongue will get stuck to it, just like what happens in the movie. He knows that that's going to happen. Has anyone kind of tried that by any chance? Don't advise it. But, I'm not going to do it. Okay, well, then I double dare you. Oh, my word, he double dared him. I'm still not going to do it, and then the kid looks at him and says, I double dog dare you, right? You remember that moment? I double dog dare you. And everyone around just kind of, like, he's serious. A double dog dare. Oh, my word. This is getting, don't you just miss, like, second grade? Don't you just miss those years of your life? Oh, my word, a double dog dare. Oh, my word. He's only 2 away from the top. And the kid still says, no, I'm not doing it. I'm not doing it. And the boy looks at him and says, well, then I triple dog dare you. And then everyone's like, he's got to do it now. Oh, my word. Their minds are just blown, right? They're like, oh, my word, a triple dog dare? How do you walk away from a triple dog dare? Oh, my goodness. And sure enough, the boy, he sticks his tongue to the pole, and it gets stuck, and they call the fire department, the police. And you guys remember how the movie goes. But friends, this season, we kind of find ourselves at a crossroad. We have the choice of getting to keep the parties and the presents and the pleasures and all those things kind of in the middle. And we can go through Christmas as usual and wake up at the other end of the holiday feeling overwhelmed and stressed and feeling exhausted, physically, emotionally, financially, and spiritually. We can wake up on the other side of the season like that. Or we can embrace God's invitation to push those things to the edge, to the perimeter, and be more focused on praising Him, on being faithful to His promises and His purposes, and about pointing others to Him. And so, friends, this may sound kind of silly, but if you're on the edge of how you want to be during this and live during Christmas this year, well, I dare you. I dare you to live. I feel like I'm 9 years old saying that again. I dare you to consider living Christmas differently this year. Because, friends, how great would it be? How great would it be if you really felt like your family grew during this season? If you felt closer to your kids this season? How great would that be? If you felt like your kids connected better to their grandparents and even with each other, with each other. Imagine what that would be like. Imagine what it would be like to not get sucked into all that drama that comes up with our family and with our workplace, Christmas parties and different things like that. Imagine if we just kind of do us and making sure that we're faithful to what God is calling us to do. Imagine how great of a Christmas we would really have. Imagine if we woke up on the 26th not being bankrupt because we try to perform. Not having our bodies being physically broken because our calendars were filled. Or having our hearts just not stop beating because our credit cards were maxed out. Imagine if we went through this season just focusing on praising God, being faithful to His purposes and His promises, and pointing others to Him. Imagine how great it would feel when we wake up on the other side of Christmas knowing that, wow, we really did Christmas this year. And I can't wait until next year. Would you pray with me for a moment?